You are listening to MCC Votes and Seats, the podcast series of the Center for Political Science of Matthias Corvinus Collegium. We provide election insights with experts and politicians. This time, our podcast series continues its Bulgaria spin-off with its episode number 6, which means there have been 6 legislative elections in the Southeast European country in the last 3 years. Today, we are delighted to have Professor Katia Mihailova from the University of National and World Economy in Sofia. Dr. Mihailova serves as an associate professor at the Department of Economic Sociology, and she specializes in political communication, elections, public opinion polling, as well as voting behavior analysis. Katia, we truly appreciate that you accepted our invitation.
Well, thank you very much for your invitation. It's a professional pleasure for me being with you.
As I mentioned, you just had the 6th legislative election since April 2021. Besides being held in parallel with the European parliamentary election, was this ballot any different from the earlier ones?
Well, the first that comes to my mind is that we had some new parties in these elections, but these new parties, this phenomenon does not make any difference because we have new parties in any of the past 5 snap elections in my country. The register of the political parties shows that we have 18 new parties registered in the period of 2020 to 2024, and all of them participated in the last 5 snap elections. Here comes the question, are these new parties different in a qualitative term? It seems that they are different. One of them is the last neoliberal project We Continue the Change, or Продължаваме промяната, PP. Looking at their electoral result in all of the 6 snap elections, it seems that the change we started in the summer of 2020 is going to its end. The other one new party that appeared in the last 44 years is There Is Such a People, ITN, as the abbreviation in Bulgarian is. Its electoral result shows that there is really such a people in Bulgaria, and they are staying firmly on the political stage. The party is one of the both parties that risen its electoral result compared to the previous elections. The other one party that risen its result is the Movement for Right and Freedom, very specific political phenomenon in Bulgaria in the last 30 years. And the last party that entered Bulgarian parliament is the brand new party with the name Greatness. We have never had such a party name before. So thinking of something new, this party name is a brand new phenomenon for the Bulgarian political field. However, we have already seen what happened with the brand new parties in the previous parliaments, and I'm very curious to understand what will be the political fate of Greatness. As a whole, the campaign was just another one of the agonizing cycle of Bulgarian political parties. Everyone did their best to stay on the political stage, but the results clearly showed that their political efforts are somehow not enough for Bulgaria to have stable, reliable, and internationally recognized government with a prime minister who can visit his colleagues in Hungary, in Moscow, in Ankara, in London, in Washington, for example, and set up a good political and economic, education and cultural relations with them.
So on the 9th of June, the representatives in the National Assembly were elected in conjunction with the Bulgarian members of the European Parliament. Did the EP election and campaign have any effect on the party's performance in the parliamentary ballot?
In my opinion, there was no impact between the EP elections and national elections. The EP elections are still second-order elections following the concept of Reich and Hermann Schmidt. So the focus of our attention was mainly on our national legislative elections. During the campaign, only GERB demonstrated clear and reliable interactions with the EU. Borisov and GERB CDC meet Ursula von der Leyen in Plovdiv, and after that meeting, GERB CDC won 5 EP mandates in the European Parliament. On the contrary, Revival, the nationalistic party Revival, demonstrated no such connections with the European Parliament, but their candidate, the journalist Peter Volgin, is the champion of preferences from the European elections. He won more than 70,000 personal votes. This is a fact which I cannot miss in my analysis of the political situation in Bulgaria now after these 6 snap elections.
Now let's go back to the background of this snap parliamentary election. A year ago or so, the centrist We Continue the Change, PP as abbreviated in Bulgarian, and former Prime Minister Boyko Borisov's right-wing GERB agreed to form a government with a rotational premiership. The We Continue to Change candidate, Nikolai Denkov, has been the prime minister for the first 9 months, and GERB's Maria Gabriel served as deputy prime minister and the foreign affairs minister. After 9 months, the two would have to switch positions. So the two rival parties broke their pre-election promises and cooperated with each other while they claimed the government was not a coalition. They just added their strength together to continue Bulgaria's accession process into the Schengen area and Eurozone and so on and so forth. As far as I understood, after the Denkov government submitted its resignation as agreed in March 2024, GERB proposed a new cabinet without getting the consent of PP and Democratic Bulgaria. And PP and Democratic Bulgaria ministers subsequently declared they did not wish to enter such government at all. Why did this agreement between GERB and the aforementioned two parties on the rotation coalition government system fail to materialize? Why did it collapse in March 2024?
Well, this is a very interesting question for me too. And I'm thinking on its answer for a long time, at least in the last 9 months. Let me start answering with the theory and political ethics, the theory of political ethics. You probably know the so-called problem of dirty hands in political theory, and particularly in political ethics, defined in 1973 by Walzer. The dirty hands problems is a metaphor of a political action through which the politicians make extreme moral compromise. For example, make alliances and governmental coalitions with their extreme moral opponents. This is what the neoliberals from We Continue the Change and Democratic Bulgaria exactly made. They got their hands dirty entering into government with their extreme moral opponent GERB. Just 3 years after, PPDB led the civil protests against the ruling GERB. I think this is the fundamental reason why their coalition disappeared and was very ineffective in the last 9 months. The public speakers of PPDB tried to convince the Bulgarian people that the moral compromise is absolutely needed because it is the only way Bulgaria to stay safe and to keep its national dignity in the time of the war in Ukraine. But it seems that this declared goal was not the goal that was a moving force for this agreement between PPDB and GERB. As a result, PPDB stayed with their dirty hands now outside from the government, and note that they lost half of their electorate in the last elections after the crash of their dirty hands government. And now in the 15th Bulgarian parliament, they are not the first, they are not the second, but they are the third one party. And their result is very close to the result of the ultra-nationalistic revival. Just the difference between them is just 1% or 12,000 votes. My analysis of the Bulgarian political history of the last 3 decades makes me think that in Bulgaria, the dirty hands phenomenon doesn't work at all. We have several other such coalitions made on extreme moral compromises between extreme opponent parties. And all these coalitions ended with no success for Bulgaria and with no success for the parties that actually made them. For example, the left БСП, which is in severe crisis now. For example, the left БСП actively supported their political opponents of the right PPDB, and they made coalition which was based on extreme moral compromise, and this their governmental coalition ended unsuccessfully and unexpectedly for all of the partners. Then we had coalition before this, if I have to be right, before this we had another coalition between БСП and DPS, Movement for Rights and Freedom. We also had a coalition between GERB and the right reformist bloc. We also had such coalition based on dirty hands phenomenon between GERB and the populist patriotic formations. In all of these cases, the loser is usually the party whose betrayal of political and moral and ideology is greater. The loser in БСП MRF DPS coalition was БСП. The loser in GERB and reformist bloc was the right reformist bloc. The loser in БСП PPDB was БСП. And now PPDB is paying the bill for their coalition with GERB. The winner takes it all. What was the reason? The reason was the extreme moral compromise that the parties done making this governmental coalition. I still believe that moral and values are the prime fundament of all human economic and political success or misfortune.
Wow, this is a quite logical explanation or a way of interpretation of the government crisis between the right-wing GERB and the centrist PPDB alliance. It obviously makes sense, even if the dirty hands phenomenon applied to this situation is still just a theoretical approach as of now. However, I am rather grateful for the historical examples you gave us to better understand the current state of the art in Bulgarian party politics. So the previous election in 2023 showed little change compared to the earlier ballots, with Boyko Borisov's GERB SDS narrowly coming in first place before the centrist PPDB alliance. The far-right revival and the anti-establishment Imatakav Narod, ITN, also received relatively good results. On the other hand, the left-wing parties are in continuous decline. What can be said about the current party lineup in Bulgaria in light of the 9th of June results?
The crisis of the left-wing parties is clearly visible. The oldest and the biggest left party shrink to 7% or 151,000 votes. This result was not surprising at all, as БСП is in the mode of slow and sure decline in the last 5 snap elections. There are some attempts in the left which cannot attract and retain citizens' trust. So Bulgarian left political space is nearly empty, and most of my colleagues predict the appearance of a new left party in Bulgaria. The question is, do we really need a new left party, and how it could survive if it appeared in the dominantly right Europe, for example? In Europe, we see dominantly right and far right parties. In Bulgaria, after the last snap elections, the situation is right the same, except that we have the DPS, Movement for Right and Freedom phenomena, which is one of the two parties that rise in their electoral results. We cannot miss the fact that DPS is still on the political stage. Moreover, it is the second party in the fifth parliament. If I have to, Wikipedia said that DPS is the Turkish minority interests party in Bulgaria. We should think about DPS and its role in the more than 30 years of democratic history of my country, my society. So what we have, we do not have left, we have right, and we have DPS. That's my conclusion of the political situation, of the party situation after that elections.
Let's move on to the 2024 election campaign. What were the main messages of the major political parties this time? Were there any distinctive issues, scandals worth mentioning?
A very good question, but regretfully, there was nothing new and eye-catching from the side of political parties. Diana Bobeva is a journalist from Kazanlak, Bulgarian city Kazanlak. This is the capital of roses, this city. She focused my attention on the facts that deserves our attention when we are thinking about party and political messages. She attended all the party's events in the campaign in her own town. And what she noticed is that the candidate, the parties are speaking about corruption, economic crisis, and what they will do in that situation if they have power in Bulgaria. And when the party stopped their speaking, the citizens who attend the political meetings, the electoral meetings, always put the questions about education and culture. Education and culture are of a supreme importance for the citizens. But somehow the parties doesn't recognize their priority. I personally fully share the same, and during the campaign I noticed that only one of the parties clearly prioritized education and cultural politics in their program, and this was the ruling party GERB. So nothing new in terms of political speaking, but there is something new in the citizens, in the voters, and what is new in this field is the speaking and thinking of the education and culture as a priority for Bulgaria now.
Yeah, so education and culture were catchy messages. However, how did the candidates try to mobilize their electorate for the fifth early election in a row? I guess it was not an easy task to convince people to go to the polls.
Well, of course, it was not an easy task. We are speaking about the sixth snap elections in the last 4 years in Bulgaria. And looking at the electoral results, I can say that the party failed in their attempt to mobilize their electorate. The voter turnout is getting lower, and the core reason for this is not that the citizens are politically irresponsible or lazy or anything else that could throw the blame on the voters. And the voters have no blame for that they cannot find whom to delegate to the governance of our society. Some of the candidates want to run the country like a corporation, like a big corporation. They tried to do so, but their attempt was unsuccessful. Other of the candidates want to rule the country just to rule. And I'm asking, and I'm trying to find someone who wants to rule Bulgaria as a motherland, because this is the core of all.
We see a 4-year-long, everlasting political and constant governmental crisis in Bulgaria. In your opinion, what could pull the country out of the political crisis that started in 2020? What development might put an end to this difficult situation?
Oh, well, my favorite question of our talk, of our interview is just that. I'm thinking about that question constantly in the last 4 years. I think that this is the question that is of greatest importance for us all in Bulgaria. What could pull the country out of the political crisis? We started thinking about its answer, or maybe its answers, with the journalist Ani Kostova in the air of the Bulgarian national radio in the night before the Dormition of the Virgin Mary on August the 15th, 2020. Just 35 days after the beginning of the civil protest in Bulgaria started. What I noticed is that at that time, at that hot summer days in Bulgaria in 2020, the lack of a positive program for Bulgaria was missing. Everybody, the protest leaders, the public intellectuals, the citizens, and even my close fellows spoke only for the hard fist of the Bulgarian president, the resignations of the prime minister and the chief prosecutor, the model of the state governments, the mafia in Bulgaria, that should be changed. But change with what? The answer was missing, although it was and it is still vital for our society and for us all. And as a scientist, I started a literature review to find what sociology, Christian theology, arts and literature already can say, answering just that question. Then I conducted some qualitative research, but you know that is the specific scientific mode of thinking. And in 2023, all my efforts successfully ended with the monograph Intellectuals in the Anti-Intellectual Situation. The anti-intellectual situation in my society is the heart base of the political crisis or the political agony in which we live, work and love, let's say from 2009 up to now. This political crisis, the long-lasting political crisis, ended to a political agony after 2020. This political agony could be characterized as a crucial situation on the crossroad between new life and death. As I adore new life, because life is a gift given to us by God, I cannot stop thinking about the positive program for my Bulgaria. What we need to do first is at least to try to correct the anti-intellectual situation. I said that this is the fundamental of the political crisis and agony. The correction could start from the education. We speak a little for education in our talk now. We desperately need the education to be in a good hand now. I'm afraid that Adam Smith's invisible hand could be of no use for Bulgarian education now. Also, the dirty hands are not useful in the Bulgarian education. The overcoming of the anti-intellectual situation is more likely to be initiated and led by Bulgarian intellectuals, but not those who are known as political pundits, but those who are able to produce an engaged scholarship or scholarship with commitment, as Pierre Bourdieu said some time ago. We need education. We need a committed intellectuals. And the third, what we need to overcome the political crisis is a new ethics, a new political, a new civil, a new academic ethics. These new ethics should be based on Christianity, in my point of view. Bulgaria is still Christian, and so does Europe. I've done what I can in this direction by writing and publishing the first book on academic ethics in my country, just a year before our talk today. Most of the political analysts are speaking of the need of a new political party that could lead the country from the crisis. What I say is that in this furious political agony, first we need a new political ethics. And then the party which could express it will somehow appear. Just have a look at the data. We have about 130 registered political parties, and 8 of them are new parties formed in the period of political agony in the last 4 years. And the agony still continues. So it is not the new political party itself or the new political project, as it is fashionable to speak now in Bulgaria, what could pull the country out of the crisis, but a new ethics, a strong education, engaged knowledge, and active intellectuals. This is what we need in Bulgaria. This is also what we need in Europe.
Wow, thank you for sharing such philosophical and academic explanations, thus enriching our podcast analysis with multidisciplinary approaches. That was amazing, truly amazing. Still, the question comes, what and who will bring that new political ethics you envisioned? Yet, I'm sure no one knows the answer to it now, but we are really looking forward to learning more about Bulgarian politics in future. And that's why we have launched this podcast series in the first place. Last but not least, personally, what development did you find the most interesting during the 9th of June parliamentary election in Bulgaria?
5 things, 5 developments, if I might say. First, it is the decline of the left, and particularly the oldest Bulgarian party, БСП, Bulgarian Socialist Party. Now, this is actually a decline of one of the most influential political ideas of 20th century. The decline of the Bulgarian Socialist Party is not so interesting, but the decline of the socialist idea as one of the most influential political ideologies of 20th century is a very interesting development now in Bulgaria. And I will follow this development in the next days, months, or I don't know, in the next years. Second, this is the decline of the neoliberal, we continue the change, and democratic Bulgaria. Well, actually, this was the last neoliberal project, political project in Bulgaria, and it seems that it is going to its end after the 6 snap elections. In my point of view, this is not only the decline of both parties, but this is a decline of one of the most persistent illusions of Bulgarians, that the Bulgarian survivor will come from abroad and will be educated in Harvard or Cambridge or whatever, or whenever you can imagine. The Bulgarian survivor, I say it in inverted commas, the Bulgarian survivor, I'm sure, is born in Bulgaria and educated in Bulgaria and feels Bulgaria with all the fibers of its body and soul. Third, very interesting for me development after the election is the electoral success of Има такъв народ, there is such a people, and also the electoral success of the movement for rights and freedom, the Turkish minority party in Bulgaria. These two parties rise in their result, and the question is why? Only they both succeeded to get such a result. There is a hypothesis connected with the forms of pre-election corruption, of course. This is something that we cannot miss in the next days and years in Bulgaria. There is another hypothesis for the electoral success, and it is connected with the authenticity and the clear civil profile and social base of both parties. And the fourth interesting development for me is the result of the nationalistic party revival compared to the result of the neoliberal and Euro-Atlantic party. We continue the change. And of course, their partners from democratic Bulgaria. The difference between the revival and we continue the change is just 1% that leads to the idea that nationalistic and Euro-Atlantic vote in Bulgaria are nearly equal. This is something that Europe should think about and should take into account in its future European politics. And the last one that is very interesting is the silence of voters, because Bulgarian voters were silent in these elections. The silence of voters leads to the hypothesis that the moral relation between political parties and citizens and Bulgarian citizens is broken. The moral relation is broken. The building of a new moral relation is exactly the starting point if we want to make Europe great again, as the motto of the upcoming Hungarian presidency of the Council of European Union. So let's build the moral connection, the social connection again. And that's all for me for this question up to now.
Yes, indeed. It was very mind-blowing what you mentioned, that the centrist We Continue to Change Democratic Bulgaria has actually now 39 parliamentary seats, and the right-wing Revival has 38 mandates in the National Assembly. So it's only one mandate more for the PPDB alliance, electoral alliance. Of course, Gerbes Diaz, the right-wing Gerbes Diaz of former Prime Minister Boyko Borisov, has 68 parliamentary seats. DPS, the Turkish minority party, has 47. There are the socialists with 19 parliamentary mandates. Slavi Trifonovs, There Is Such a People, have 16, and so on and so forth. And now we have this new Greatness Party on the right that are supposedly neutralists and not as pro-Russians as the Revival Party, with 13 parliamentary mandates. Thank you very much for the idea about this, the silence of the voters. I think it should be used as the title of our podcast episode. I really like that one. Katia Mihailova from the Sofia-based University of National and World Economy, we are truly grateful for your most appreciated insights into Bulgarian politics. You shed light upon a lot of interesting and important aspects about the political parties, the voters' behavior, and the current crisis in Bulgaria. Thank you for sharing your rather thought-provoking views with us.
Well, thank you very much for your invitation. It was a real professional challenge for me to speak with you in the meet of this day.
Dear listeners, you have been following the podcast analysis of the Votes and Seats series about the 2024 legislative and EP elections in Bulgaria, a country hit by a 4-year-long political crisis and waiting for its full membership in the Schengen area and the Eurozone. Stay tuned for our next episodes. Take care. Goodbye.